Good morning to you all. Welcome to this week's Keeping an Eye on the Geopolitical Ball with myself, Jamie Shea, Senior Fellow at Friends of Europe. I'm in Washington this week. But like many of you, I spent last Monday watching the very moving funeral service for Queen Elizabeth II from Westminster Abbey in London. This service showed the power of attraction that the British monarchy still has, not only within the country itself, where hundreds of thousands of people lined the streets to pay their last respects to the Queen, but also internationally with the 150 heads of state and government, including President Biden, that made the effort to travel to London for the service. It also showed that the UK is able to put on quite a show of pageantry when it needs to. And it reminded all of us that the Queen being on the throne for over 70 years was a kind of symbol of the ability of the United Kingdom to cope with change while preserving a certain sense of national unity, national pride and continuity. During the Queen's 70 years, the UK gave up its empire and created in stealth the Commonwealth. It became a far less white and much more ethnically diverse society. It devolved powers away from the Westminster to Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. It promoted much greater social inclusion and social equality, particularly when it came to the role of women in the workforce and in British society. It marked the end of deference and what we may call the establishment, with a much more inquiring media culture and a much more vibrant civil society. The shift to different types of worker practices as well. Everything that Tony Blair once tried to encapsulate in the slogan Call Britannia. And so the passing of the Queen, who has been there for virtually all of our lives. So, for example, she was Queen when I was born in 1953. Most people have never known any other monarch. Inevitably sort of raises questions of quo vadis the United Kingdom. Now that this sort of symbol of continuity, of unity, this kind of psychological bond that many British people, even if they were not particularly royalist, identified with, has passed from the scene. Because within a couple of days in the UK, we've had, first of all, a new king, Charles III, but also a new prime minister in the shape of Liz Truss, who has replaced Boris Johnson. The 10 days of national mourning indeed took much of the focus off Liz Truss and her incoming administration, maybe giving her a little bit of time and space to think about where she is going to take the country from here on. Now, certainly she inherited an extremely demanding domestic agenda. The issues, of course, of inflation running at over 10%, the decline of the pound vis-a-vis the euro, and the dollar, cost of living, which is now a major crisis infecting the middle classes as well, the increasing number of people falling into the poverty trap, pressures on the NHS, increasing labour unrest in the railway sector, in ports like Felix, among teachers, even among lawyers who have been threatening to go on strike as well. The Scots now saying that they want to hold a new referendum on independence next year, and the increasing polarisation between the nationalist community in Northern Ireland and the Ulster Unionist Party, who have refused to enter a new power-sharing agreement. So Liz Truss is certainly going to have enough on her plate preserving the social peace within the UK itself in the weeks ahead. So my conclusion is that what she least can afford to do is to keep going a number of rather non-productive and artificial foreign policy issues, which Boris Johnson seemed only too keen to stoke up during his time in Downing Street. What am I talking about? Well, first of all, things like the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is a key part of Britain's withdrawal agreement from the EU. The UK, under the Johnson administration, was threatening to introduce a new law to override this Northern Ireland Protocol or to activate its Article 16 unilaterally. Now, this gave UK a very poor reputation, not just in Brussels, for breaking international law, for breaking its own commitments. And as the UK itself desired to withdraw from the European Union and not remain part of the single market, it has to be logical in terms of accepting that, therefore, there has to be some kind of border monitoring process between the UK and Northern Ireland, or Ireland itself. And so one of the first things that I hope Liz Truss will do will be to abandon this legislation in the UK Parliament. Brussels has been willing to adopt a flexible line on this, for example, by agreeing to exemptions when it comes to medicines and so on, and a new compromise can be struck. Let's get rid of the posturing there, please. The second area is these threats to withdraw from the European Court of Human Rights and the European Convention on Human Rights. Many British Conservatives think that that's part of the EU, but it's not. It's entirely separate, which is part of the Council of Europe, and the UK remains a member of the Council of Europe. The respect for the European Convention on Human Rights is very key to a large number of UK international agreements. Let's also stop this idea of transporting illegal migrants to Rwanda, where we have no guarantees that their human rights will be respected. This practice has not just been condemned by Strasbourg and the European Court of Human Rights, but a number of British courts as well. Hopefully, Liz Truss will work more constructively with France. Relations with France deteriorated alarmingly while Boris Johnson was in Downing Street. Now, Liz Truss has said that she doesn't really have a judgment on President Macron, but if we're going to stop these illegal migrants perilously crossing the channel in dinghies, we need to talk to the French, come up with more solution. We need to talk to the EU on issues like energy, as the EU looks at creating a more integrated energy market and reduces its dependency on Russia. The UK imports a lot of its energy from Europe and needs to maintain its participation in the grid. There may be other possibilities too for Liz Truss to reach out to Brussels in common foreign policy and defence issues. For example, the United States and Norway already participate in defence capability building projects with the EU. This would be very attractive to the UK defence industry as well. We could look at being part of the future European trade agreements, which the EU is negotiating with Latin America and elsewhere. The EU carries much more weight in that respect than the UK going it alone. Now, the UK has certain things to bring to the table. In foreign policy terms, of course, it's been a great advocate of Ukrainian resistance to Russia. Many Ukrainian soldiers are being trained in the UK, and the UK has provided a lot of equipment. Similarly, the UK has played a leading role working alongside the EU, particularly France and Germany, in trying to secure a new nuclear deal with Iran as well. But if we're going to be successful, we've got to realise that the alternatives that Brexit seemed to promise have so far not really panned out in reality. There is no agreement with the United States, and President Biden has not really suggested that there will be one anytime soon. Our relations with China are as bad as they've ever been in the wake of the Chinese repression in Hong Kong. The Commonwealth, yes, has stayed alive, but largely because of the respect for the Queen and the great investment that the Queen made in it. Now that the Queen has gone, there's no guarantee that other Commonwealth countries will not follow the example of Barbados and declare themselves to be republics and no longer recognise the monarchy as the head of state. Jamaica, for example, has been making noises about doing that very recently as well. So there is no alternative to closer cooperation with the European Union. Liz Truss has been a bit of a Eurosceptic, but she also has to recognise that she was elected by just over 50% of the members of her own party. Not an overwhelming vote of confidence, so she doesn't really owe those people anything. So let her not try to become the second Margaret Thatcher or the second Boris Johnson, but the first Liz Truss. So in the 19th century, the UK liked to say that it was in splendid isolation. Since Brexit, splendid has become very unsplendid. So let her mantra be splendid re-engagement instead. Thank you for watching and listening today. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye for now.